Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Palestinian British political analyst Yousef Al-Halou. Really good to see you in person, Yousef. We witnessed the only bit that we were going to see today of the release of the Israeli hostages. The 6 is to be released without ceremony and without camera footage there. A lot of talk about the precarity of this process, and as equally as we've seen joy and jubilation, we've seen tragedy as well. Precarious though it may have been, it has held. We have concluded the first phase of this ceasefire.
Yes, last week we were holding our breath in anticipation of the fallout of this fragile ceasefire. There has been some delays on part of the Israeli side, accusing Hamas of violating the ceasefire terms, whereas Hamas said that Israel did not commit itself to the terms by not allowing enough quantities of tents, caravans, by not allowing Gazans to leave via Rafah crossing, by not allowing construction materials in. So there has been exchange of accusations, but so far it is holding. It's a lengthy, slow process. Israel wants the release of all of its captives at once, but Hamas said no. It was a very bad deal for Israel. Hamas was able to impose and put its conditions, dictate its conditions. And the Israeli society are annoyed that Netanyahu is not credible. He lied to the Israeli society. He said he was going to crush Hamas. Hamas is still in power. They restored law and order, and they show the display of force, as you can see on the streets when they hand over the captives.
The theatre of it is very much, the optics are of a Hamas that is very much not defeated.
No, Hamas is still powerful on the ground. Israel was able to destroy Gaza, wipe out many entire neighborhoods, killed tens of thousands of Palestinians, including over 15,000 Palestinian children, many of those children shot in the head by Israeli snipers. Israel still holds the bodies and remains of 600 Palestinian prisoners in what is known as the numbers graves. So Hamas is still on the ground, and they show their force. And the message that why people gather around those fighters when they carry out this handout procession is that they want to send a message to Trump, to America, to Israel, that we are being supported by the Palestinians. Those people lost their loved ones. The children who are gathering to monitor the handout process, they have no schools to go to. Gaza is densely populated. It has been under Israeli siege for so many years, and Palestinians in Gaza are not allowed to leave.
Widespread consternation, though, about the scenes of celebration around those coffins which were being returned to the families in Israel. What do you say to that?
Well, of course, abducting civilians and children is wrong. It shouldn't have happened. And of course, the families of the captives, they are eager to hug their loved ones. It's good that they are being released. It's also good to see hundreds of Palestinian political prisoners and captives, because Israel holds hundreds of Palestinian minors, women without a charge or a trial, in what is known, they are classified in administrative detention. So it's good that, there is sort of negotiation, there is sort of understanding, because Israel has failed miserably to release its hostages by power. Negotiations and diplomacy is the only way.
But specifically around those scenes of the cheering around the coffins of 2 little boys, an elderly gentleman who was a peace activist, it looks terrible.
It's wrong. Sometimes they are kids. Of course, such procession, such procedure should have been carried out away from the crowd, away from public display. But sometimes you cannot control things on the ground. I think Hamas meant to send a number of messages. It's a psychological warfare through the parade, through its armed men, the confiscation of the arms that they managed to keep during the 7th of October attack. Sometimes people are happy to see international staff in Gaza, because Gaza is under blockade. They rarely see foreigners in Gaza, including the ICRC staff in Gaza. Of course, they don't represent the Palestinians, those people who cheer. I mean, they are children, they are reckless, unprofessional behavior, and it doesn't represent the whole population of Gaza.
What happens next? We've reached the end. It was pretty shaky in places, but reached the end of this first phase of the ceasefire. Negotiations are really nascent about the second phase. How will there be a way found forward? I mean, Hamas says it's committed to extending the ceasefire, but Israel is hell-bent on seeing Hamas removed.
You see, any peaceful settlement to the conflict should include Hamas. This is what the Arab countries say. They said they are willing to normalize ties with Israel if Israel ends its military occupation in return for Israel to recognize a Palestinian state. Even if one of the terms of the deal that Hamas leaders should leave Gaza, you're talking about an idea. I mean, more people will join the resistance. You know, Hamas is the result and the product of Israeli occupation. If Israel didn't occupy Palestinian lands, Hamas would have never existed. And those young people who lost their parents, they will become fighters one day. So even if Hamas leaders left...
Do you think the whole notion of removing Hamas is unrealistic?
It's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. Palestinians, they are deep-rooted in their land. They will never agree to leave. Some will leave. Let's be realistic. But how are you going to convince the population of Gaza to leave? You need to provide them with security, welfare, free accommodation. There is no airport in Gaza, and Egypt controls the Rafah border crossing. Gaza seaport is the only seaport closed for shipping across the Mediterranean. So, okay, let's be clear. Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist. The IRA were called terrorists. And yet, you know, we have a statue of Nelson Mandela in Parliament Square. Imagine if the IRA, they revoked the Friday Agreement and they come to the Parliament and they abduct a number of MPs. Does the UK have a right to bomb the parliament or the hospitals? So Palestinians are being collectively punished. You cannot just play the victim each time. There is a problem to this conflict, which is the occupation. Palestinians deserve a decent life. Palestinians are the most educated people across the Middle East. And, you know, at the end of the day, Israel will never feel secure as long as it occupies Palestinian lands. Disproportionate force will not work.
But a lot of these, the situation you describe has been an intractable one for many, many years. How has the new Trump administration changed what you think the outcomes might be?
I think Trump lacks wisdom. He doesn't know the geopolitics of the region. He's a businessman. He's good at signing financial deals. Any solution to this conflict, as I say, requires all parties to come together, Hamas, Israel, the Arab governments, to put an end to this misery, to this suffering. The dehumanization and demonization of Palestinians must stop. So Trump has to be transparent, have to be credible, because the Palestinians, they have lost faith in the involvement and role of the U.S. administration. It has never been an honest peace broker. You cannot be pro-Israel forever. There is people who have grievances in Palestine, Gaza, and even Hamas, they have softened their constitution and they said they are willing to accept a Palestinian state on lands occupied in 1967. So the U.S. administration has to realize that by being anti-Palestinian, this will not serve the interest of the American people. There is awakening. People in America, at campuses, at universities, in the U.S., in the United States, across the world, they are waking up. There is awareness thanks to social media. The Western media no longer maintain monopoly on what's going on. So, again, peaceful negotiations, dialogue is the only way. You cannot sideline Hamas. This is what Arab countries they are saying. And Palestinians, you know, this 76 years of occupation meant that Palestinians are defiant, they are resilient, and they are not going anywhere. They are not going to the museum, and Palestinians will stay on their land.
Yousef Al-Halou, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.